Hi, this is Jason from Horrific Nightmares, and I'm going to do the last Shoegazer. My buddy Nick, he did a tag called the Nostalgia Tag, and it's something I really wanted to do. It's been a lot of fun, kind of taking a walk down memory lane and trying to um, incorporate all the media that I could find and or get to. Um, so, uh, from a very early age, I was into Spider-Man. Um, yeah, he was always my favorite superhero up until maybe 10 years ago when he kind of shared the number one spot with Daredevil. But there's me at a amusement park when I was a kid, and I got to meet Spider-Man, which was really cool. Um, which of course led to the Spider-Man 67 collection, which are very cheesy cartoons, but they're some of my all-time favorites. Um, which of course led to comic books. Now, my father used to buy comic books for us because he read them too. And these were back when they were 25 cents a piece, so of course you'd buy like a dollar's worth of them, bring them home, and that in school, of course, is how I kind of learned how to read. But me being born in 71 um, and being in elementary school around in that, in the 70s era and early 80s, comic books really weren't as popular as they are now. So they were kind of, I guess, looked down on kind of for, or looked like a child for reading comic books. But when you're lucky enough to find some people who are really into comic books like you are, they, yeah, you make some really good friends. And some of my childhood friends were very much into comic books. Um, this is one of my friends right here, Adam Weinstein. I have mentioned him before. His favorite movie, of course, is Blade Runner, and it's my second favorite. Unfortunately, this is his obit. He passed away in 2001, but this was at a birthday party at my mom's house when I was in my early 20s. But yeah, that's my buddy Adam. And through Blade Runner, we got interested in film and in doing short films and stuff for school. Also, we got into music, and he was, of course, one of my band members, which leads me to Jaws, which you guys have heard me mention several times in the past. One of my other band members, named Eric, really, really good friend of mine, also passed away when he was 36. Now, Adam passed away when he was 30, Eric when he was 36. We must have been like cursed, like Def Leppard or something. But yeah. But I have mentioned Eric before. He was the one we used to walk down the hallways, kind of shouting Jaws quotes at each other. Um, yeah, it was his favorite film. And of course, we were all in the same band together, and we all liked comic books and everything. So let's do part two, which comes with the music and TV. Since I'm not really good at editing or anything like that yet, yeah, I'm kind of doing it this way for now. But really into playing the guitar in high school, into Eric Clapton, of course, and many of you know with this getting to know you tag, I'm also into Prince, and this is kind of weird. Yngwie Malmsteen, of course, he's a guitar player. If you guys haven't heard of him, he's a Swedish guitar player who kind of, I don't know, does the whole neoclassical thing. And this is my favorite album by him. It always reminds me of the early 90s when I was playing with my band. And then we have another form of music that I really like, which is, of course, heavy metal. Queensryche was one of my favorite bands of all time. I know I was talking to my buddy Sean Urshan, and he's a big Operation Mindcrime fan, as am I. I did see Queensryche twice in concert, and they played the entire Mindcrime album, which was so cool, back when they were all still together. And of course, King Diamond, big King Diamond fan. My favorite album from him is Them, which brings me back to the mid-90s, when I was managing an auto parts store, and it just kind of brings me back to that whole time. Now, one of my favorite television shows, of course, is Tales from the Dark Side, also Tales from the Crypt, but this is one of the few shows that I kind of tried to keep up with. So, yeah, always a Tales from the Dark Side fan. I know Nick has also showed this, but I really used to love watching this, along with Tales of the Crypt as well. Now, part 3. Into the horror we go. Of course, I'm a major fan of Phantasm, and that's the one that Nick bought for me. I also have that in the Anchor Bay. Hey, Franks. There's Frankie in the window. I also have the Anchor Bay version of it and the MGM version of it as well. And these are just some of my favorite movies, some of which I have actually done with Nick recently. So these are making new memories now for me to look back in nostalgia later. Of course, Happy Birthday to Me was my very first horror film that I saw, legit horror film. And, I saw it at a sleepover at my friend's house. And over that same friend's house, the second one I saw was the Friday the 13th Part 2. Yeah, which kind of sealed my fate right there as far as horror is concerned. And just some of my other favorites. Here we have the classic monsters. Hey, Frankie, you're going to have to sit down for a minute. I can't come get you, okay? Sit down. The classic monsters, which I watched when I was younger, and I introduced them to my daughter, my wife and I, during some Halloweens. So, has a lot of nostalgia there. Now for the final part, and I'm just going to start putting these out. Star Wars, the original 3, the New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, of course, have tremendous nostalgia for me. My cousin who lived with me for a while, and still comes by, we go see movies and, all that kind of stuff. We grew up playing with the action figures, making forts, and, playing with blasters, and flying the Millennium Falcon, and all that kind of stuff, so... And then this movie is, of course, my favorite of all time. It takes me back to around in that time in the early 80s when I originally saw it. I remember it being summertime, and we rented it. And my parents' bedroom, of course, was all the way across the house. And in their bedroom was the video disc player and or VCR or beta whenever we got them. And I remember sitting in my parents' bedroom just watching this over and over again. So, many of you guys don't know, I am a huge James Bond fan. I never really talk about that much, but this is my favorite, of course. And this really takes me back because I've been watching the Bond movies ever since I was a little kid. But love James Bond. Here's one that you don't hear talked about a lot, The Commitments, Irish band, one of the greatest movies of all time. They influenced my love for R&B, believe it or not, old R&B. So I have a lot of nostalgia watching this. This is a fantastic movie and was really hard to find for a long time. But got into the blues with B.B. King and, of course, Eric Clapton up here, which became my main sort of art form as far as music is concerned. and it just makes me smile every time I listen to B.B. King. It's just really does take me back. Some of the other movies I love from my childhood are, of course, Planet of the Apes, which I used to watch all the time. I'm a massive Planet of the Apes fan. Um, I even watched the Tim Burton one, which is not very good, but I'm just a fan of it altogether. So the original movies are always my favorite. My favorite being the Conquest for the Planet of the Apes. Frankie, sit. I'll be with you in a second, okay? Sit. Also, in my childhood, and this really takes me back, I was a huge martial arts fan. Chuck Norris was my boy. Him and Bruce Lee, but the Octagon was always my favorite Chuck Norris movie. Continues to this day. But yeah, Chuck Norris movies. I used to go see them with my dad all the time in the movie theater. Invasion USA, Firewalker. He took me to see A Force of One when I was really young. Like I said, I was born in 71, and I think that came out around 77 or 78. So I was a little too young, but it kind of started me on my whole martial arts kick. So, but yeah, fond memories of that. I also really like Charles Bronson. He reminds me a lot of my childhood, watching the Death Wish movies and renting 10 to Midnight and um, St. Ives and The Stone Killer and all those movies of Bronson I've always loved. Really reminds me of my childhood and watching all the action flicks with Bronson. And this is one that I don't really show very often, if at all. Break Hard Pass, it's one of my favorites by him. But and then of course, Discovering Christmas Story, one of the best movies of all time. Christmas movies, anyway. I love A Christmas Story, and it's one of those movies that I tend to. I mean, I do own it, but I also watch it every time it comes on. So, yeah. Just remember, I rented that and My Bloody Valentine at the same time, believe it or not. And I was so happy because I was able to find two of my favorite films of all time that day. And The Funhouse. I think I rented that at the same time. Can't remember. And then finally, I knew that Andrew Ballina mentioned The Last Starfighter. And it really made me smile when he did, because this takes me back to Christmas. When I was about, I guess, 11 maybe? 11 or 12? My parents built up the patio in the back into my mom called it a sunroom. My father and I called it our movie room because that's where we kept our VCR, our video disc player, and all that kind of stuff. So my father and I both had lazy boys, and we would sit out there and watch movies together. But when I rented this movie, the first time I watched it, it was around Christmas time. And I remember we had a tree that I really liked when I was a kid, a Christmas tree, which had a whole bunch of different kind of ornaments and stuff. And my mother, being a fan of country decor, I guess, had to have a real tree where we would string cranberries and popcorn and all that. And I remember when I rented this for the first time, watching this during that time and stringing cranberries and popcorn, watching Last Starfighter. Weird part about it is the year after that, when we were doing it, I was watching this as well again. After that, it became conscious, and every year that we would put up a tree with cranberry and popcorn and gingerbread cookies and all that, I would watch this movie. So after the first 2 years, it kind of became tradition. But yeah, brings back a lot of fond memories, and I love this movie. But that's it. That's yeah, it's a long video, but I brought out a lot of stuff, and it kind of takes me back to different parts of my life. Thanks so much for doing this, Nick. You're a great friend. You have a great channel, and I really enjoy doing this. I would encourage a lot of other people to do it because it's a lot of fun. Yeah, so. But if you like what you see in here, hit that like button and subscribe. And until next time.